So in chapter 13 of his Gospel, John records for us a brilliant little detail that I think actually activates even more confidence in the providence of God's work and God's life through the actions of the Gospel. The context is the Last Supper, and Jesus has just dropped this emotional bomb into the room that he is about to be betrayed by one of the disciples actually in the room. So at this moment, John, we're told, leans back onto Jesus and sort of whispers to him and says, "Lord, who is it? Who's going to betray you?" And Jesus says, "The one to whom I give this morsel of bread." He looks at Judas and he says, "What you're about to do it quickly." We're told that at this moment, the power of Satan is activated into the life of Judas, and he immediately leaves, and then the events really start to tumble and unfold that lead to the crucifixion. In many ways, if you want to use this metaphor, Judas is the pebble, and the pebble starts to roll and hits a few stones, that hits a few rocks, that hits the boulders, that makes the whole mountainside start to slide down and ultimately crush Jesus. The mountainside lands upon Jesus in the events actually of the crucifixion with his death. But the starting point is this one little pebble that starts to tumble. Now, John gives us the detail of how the pebble moved. Who flicked the pebble? Was it Judas's own idea? Was it his hard and greedy heart? Well, that's involved, absolutely. Human volition is active here. Was it the power of the devil working in his life? Well, we're also told that that is active here. But we're given this extraordinary little detail that Jesus is actually the one who flicks the pebble to activate the whole series of events that leads into Judas leaving, meeting the high priests, the money, the crowd, the betrayal, the trial, etc., all the way through to the crucifixion. Jesus himself does this by looking at Judas and saying, "What you're about to do, you do quickly." So Jesus knew that he knew what was about to happen. He knew who he was. He knew what had to be done. He knew the path exactly that lay ahead of him. And he even knew the moment when Judas had to get up and leave the room. And so Jesus orchestrates this himself. Now, why is this important? Well, it's important for us to remember that in this sort of prophetic act, the providence, the confidence of God is unshakable. That Jesus at this point is not a victim of circumstances being swept along on this river like a little boat where he has no power. He just can't help but just be carried along by the violence of the mob or the power of the politics of Rome. No, Jesus is fully and confidently in control of his own path, his own decisions, his own journey. We're told elsewhere in John that Jesus says, "I am the good shepherd. The shepherd lays his life down for the sheep. Nobody takes it from him. Nobody takes it from him." He says, "I lay it down." So there's this, again, reinforced conviction that Jesus actually is fully in command of his own destiny. There are some modern theologies around at the moment that really like to promote this idea that it was Jesus being used as a scapegoat for the powers of Rome and the jealousy of the Jewish mob and the high priests, and so the violence was sort of brought all of these different players together and they acted out their violence upon Jesus, and Jesus was the scapegoat, and so there's a strange theology wrapped into that. But in that story, Jesus has nothing really to do other than just go with the whim of the mob, go with the violence of the moment. That's not what's happening here at all. Jesus does yield himself to these circumstances, but on his terms. Jesus does allow Rome to be Rome, and the temple leaders to be the temple leaders, and the mob to be the mob. These things are all real and at play, and they're acting upon their own volition, and yet somehow over it and under it there's a deeper providence and a more important purpose, where somehow the beauty of God's love is demonstrated through the worst of human nature and human action. That God is actually able to redeem the most awful moments of human history, where even upon the cross, knowing what he knows, having experienced what he's gone through, he's still able to issue a blessing and not a curse. Really, we should have all been cursed out at that moment for what had taken place, but Jesus says, Father, forgive them. They do not understand what they're doing. And so all the way through, I think I get just filled with this new sense of confidence and reassurance that God has us. He has this world. He has our stories firmly embedded in the providence of his good hands. And it was Jesus himself that flicked the pebble that started the avalanche under which he allowed himself to go. So little insights there from John chapter 13 that hopefully give you some food for thought and encouragement. Till next time, peace.